Hello, my name's Maddie Harvey from Maddie Harvey Designs. I'm a knitwear designer and knitting teacher based in Edinburgh. I produce knitting patterns, knitting kits and workshops for knitters to help them develop their creativity and confidence. And this is a video tutorial to accompany my First Footing Cowl pattern, which is a cowl designed for variegated yarns in two sizes. This is the double knit version, which is slightly smaller, and there's also a 4-ply version which is a bit bigger. I'm going to show you how to work a couple of different techniques that are in this pattern. I will put the timestamp for the different techniques in the down bar so that you can skip ahead if you want to. So the first part of this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make this little bell stitch motif. So you can see that the pattern alternates these stocking stitch little bells with this garter stitch and slip stitch section, and they alternate row by row. So I've worked up a little bit of the sort of start of the cowl here, okay, and I'm ready to work the bell stitch. Now every right side row in this particular section in the cowl starts with an increase, which is a knit yarn over a knit increase. So I'll just quickly show you how to do that. So you knit the stitch as normal, but you don't take the old stitch off. Then you make a yarn over around your front needle, and then you knit the stitch again. So you've increased the stitch count by 2 stitches, and you've got 3 altogether there coming out of that one old stitch. Okay, so I'm going to knit along and get to the first bell stitch that I need to work. And it involves the next 5 stitches at the top of this stocking stitch section. So I'm going to take the 5th stitch on the needle, so this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to put my needle tip in purlwise like that, and I'm going to bring it up and off the end of the needle, being careful that the other stitches don't come off with it. Okay, so now I've got 4 stitches there with the 5th stitch sort of wrapped around the bottom of them, and then I'm going to slip the 4 stitches across to the right hand needle, and now I'll do a similar thing with the 4th stitch from the top, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll come in from the front, lift it up and over and off the needle. So now I have 3 stitches remaining, and I'm going to slip them all back over, and I'm always slipping purlwise so they don't get twisted. So I've got 2 stitches that have been wrapped around down here. So to make up for those 2, to keep the stitch count the same, I'm going to make a yarn over. So bringing my yarn to the front, then I will knit those 3. And then I will make another yarn over before I work the next stitch, so that I still have got 5 stitches in this section. I've got my 2 yarn overs and I've got my 3 stitches in the middle. So I'll just work along to the next bell stitch and show you again. So I've got 5 stitches here. I'm going to take the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th stitch, pull it. You have to pull it quite a lot up and off the end of the needle, being careful not to lose any of the other stitches. Then slip them all purlwise across to the right hand needle, lift that 4th stitch up and over, and then slip all 3 back across to the the left hand needle. And then I'm going to do a yarn over, knit the 3, and make another yarn over. And I'll just show you one more time and get along to that part. Okay, so 5th stitch, lift it up and over and off, slip 4 stitches across, the 4th stitch, lift it up, across and off, slip those 3 stitches back, and then yarn over, knit the 3, yarn over and knit those two. So you can see there, it's gathered them together and the two yarn overs replace the 2 stitches that were used for the little gather. The next technique I'm going to show you how to do is a 3 needle cast off, which is used here to create this shoulder piece before we work the neckline. So we're just joining together the first few stitches, and then we will work in the round for the neck piece. And this is what it looks like on the wrong side. It makes a nice neat join here. So I've got my little sample here. I haven't got a huge number of stitches on here, so when you come to do the 3 needle cast off, you might have to, depending on what length of needle you've been using, you might have to do the same as what I'm going to do here, which is to pull through some of the extra cable just to work together the first stitches and the last stitches, which are going to get joined. So I'm going to put right sides of the cowl together. So because I've got so few stitches, I'm going to have to pull through some of the cable here. You may not have to do that. It just depends how big a cable you have and which version of the cowl you're working. But basically, you're going to bring the right sides together, so wrong sides facing, and you've got the stitches up here on the needle tips. Okay, and I recommend using a spare needle that's 2 sizes bigger than your main needles for this, just to keep it quite loose. So I've used 4mm needles here, so this is a 5mm needle. Okay, and what you do here is you basically knit together the first 2 stitches off both needles. And then you knit the second 2 together. And then, like a regular cast off, you lift that bottom stitch over the top one and off. And you just keep doing that until you have cast off the required number of stitches. So knitting the next 2 from each needle together, and then lifting that bottom one over the top one and off. And with this pattern, you should end up having cast off the 2 edge stitches that are on each edge of the piece, and then also you're casting off a set number of the motifs in the pattern. So each of the little motifs, the little bell stitch is 5 stitches, that wee motif, and the garter stitch bit is 5 stitches. So you should end up, when you have a little peek on the inside, you should see that you have finished the 3 needle cast off at the end of one of those 5 stitch motifs, and you've got, here I can see I've got 5 stitches there. That is going to be one of the bell stitches there. But I also have this one stitch here, which is a spare stitch that I've used when I've been casting off. So when you've cast off the required number, you will have this stitch left. You just put that onto the front needle there. And then when you turn your work round to the right side, so it's a little bit awkward here because I haven't got very many stitches. But when I do that, that little extra kind of casting off stitch is on the back needle now. And then I need to work in the round. And when I get round to that stitch, at the end of the round, I will knit those 2 together to make sure that I've got a multiple of 5 stitches so that I can work the 5 stitch motifs again. At this point in the pattern, if you have been using a long cabled needle, you can work in magic loop for the cowl neck, which is worked in the round, or you could transfer your stitches onto a small 40cm cable to work in the round, or if you wanted to, you could put it onto double pointed needles during this next round. The last technique that I'm going to show you for the first footing cowl is how to create this folded neckline here. So this is double layered at the neck, and it's done by casting off by picking up stitches from further back in the piece, which makes this double layer, and it also finishes it off nicely, you can see there. So I've got a little sample here. When you're working this in the actual pattern, you'll do it in the round, but the principle is the same. So I've got, you can see a little bit of the patterning here, and then I've worked this a purl ridge here, which makes a fold line. So you can see that the knitting does actually just want to fold in half. And then I've worked on a little bit this plain part. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast this off by picking up stitches from the first round that I worked when I joined it in the round, which is just above the last eyelets, which are here. Okay, and it can be quite useful actually to mark this with some kind of lockable stitch marker or even safety pins. So that's the first stitch of that row there. And I'm just going to put this other one a little bit further along to help me keep my place. Now I'm going to pick up, I don't know if you can see there, this is like a garter ridge here. I'm going to try and pick up the bottom bumps for each stitch that I'm casting off from one up here. I'm going to pick up one of these little bumps from down here. So just trying to be consistent with what I pick up and trying to work along the same row, which is where these markers come in handy, because it can be quite easy to go off and pick up a stitch from another row. But if you put the markers in and you keep moving them along, that should help. Okay, and again, like the 3 needle cast off, I'm going to use a bigger needle to do this and a spare one. Okay, so my first one is here. So I'm just going to put that stitch onto the needle there, and I'm going to knit those two together. And then I'm going to come back down here and pick up the next one and knit those two together, which will give me 2 here. I lift one over the bottom and lift it off. Then I pick up the next bump, I knit those 2 together, and I lift that one over the top one and off. Come to the back again, pick up the next bump, knit those 2 together, lift the bottom one over the top one and off, and then pick up this next bump, knit them together and lift the bottom one over the top one and off. And when you take one marker out, you can put the next one in. So it helps a little bit if you stretch it out, you can see where to go. So I'll put this one a little bit further along, and that'll help me keep on the same line of stitches. So you can see when you've finished, it does create a really nice neat edge on the inside. I hope that video has been helpful. If you need any more information, you can use the links in the down bar to get in touch.